Hello, I'm Craig Vincent from the Sacramento Area Regional Theater Alliance, and I'm here today with Steve Carnes at the historic Woodland Opera House.
Greg, welcome to the historic Woodland Opera House. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us.
You better believe it.
You want to show us around?
Sure, I would love to show you around. This theater was built originally in 1886, and it thrived for about 6 years until the Great Fire of 1892 in downtown Woodland, which wiped out most of downtown Woodland, including this beautiful theater. So the fine folks of Woodland did not want to have a community without an opera house. So 4 years later in 1896, this theater reopened and we were back in business. And back then, this theater featured all kinds of shows, a lot of community events. We had minstrel shows, we had touring acts because we had train tracks behind the building and we could unload shows on tour, shows that perhaps were crossing the country from Reno to Salt Lake City or Salt Lake City to Reno to San Francisco, and in between they could stop here at the historic Woodland Opera House and do shows. So the theater, once again, does quite well. And by the way, this is our annex. This part of the theater is not historic. This was added on, and I'll get to that in a little bit. Once you pass this threshold, now you're in the historic theater. So the theater does well, very well. By the way, this is our upstage or upstairs balcony. Get ready for a little bit of heavy breathing. This part of the theater was added on in the 1980s. This part of the theater is all part of the original historic structure. I'll show you something. The original men's room. The original men's room, built in 1896. We feature some things that perhaps some folks have never seen. That is not a horse trough, for those of you who don't know. Right now it's being used for storage. And we go up these stairs, and you enter our balcony area. You turn the lights on. And this is a bit of a reception area for the balcony. Features some artifacts from the old days, from the theater. Over here, let me show one thing. These are the original seats from the theater. These are the original wooden seats.
They don't look very comfortable.
They aren't very comfortable. But I'll tell you what, they featured one thing. I don't know if you can pick this up. They feature that wire rack there. That was actually used for brimmed hats, wide brimmed hats that both men and women wore. Give you a safe place to put your hat, something we don't have nowadays. Over here, there's one more interesting apparatus I'd like to show you. This thing, we call it a thing right now, was found in a basement of a home down on First Street a bunch of years ago. And someone recognized it as being part of the Opera House originally. So if you've never seen one of these, and let's just say you're doing Wizard of Oz, and you need to create the tornado sound. Nowadays we push a button, and we create a tornado sound. Back then, this is what you did. And there's your wind machine right there. Once we go through these doors, you enter our balcony area. These seats here are all original. These were just restored when the Opera House reopened 30 years ago. But the balcony remained intact during a very, very dark period. We haven't got that far yet, but in 1913, this theater closed. And it closed for a couple of reasons. One, something came on the scene that they weren't expecting back then and became very popular, and that was black and white movies. And black and white movies became the rage. At one point in downtown Woodland, there were 12 theaters, 12 small theaters, all showing films. And of course, that didn't help the Woodland Opera House, who was still doing live shows. And then there was a lawsuit. A woman went out a door, which I'll show you in a few minutes, and what looked like a door, but it was actually a loading dock, and broke her wrist and sued the Opera House. As part of that settlement, the owner at the time, David Hershey, said, I'm not going to be paying for liability insurance. I'm just going to close the doors. And he did. In 1913, he closed the doors, and this theater remained dark for decades. It wasn't really until the 1970s when we had a grassroots campaign by the community to try to reopen this theater. And they worked for 10 years, just doing general cleanup, trying to raise small amounts of money to get this thing back up and going. And in the early 1980s, they caught the eye of the state of California. And the state of California donated basically a little over $2 million to completely restore this theater back to the way it was in 1896 when it was built. So that took about 8 years. In 1989, this theater opened with a big grand opening. The opening night featured Bob Crosby, Bing Crosby's brother, and his big band. And they had quite the gala in downtown Woodland to celebrate the reopening of the Woodland Opera House. Craig, come with me. We'll go out into the main part of the theater here. One thing we've added here at the Woodland Opera House the past few years is a couple museums. The Woodland Opera House is actually a California state park. We are standing in California's smallest state park. So we have to keep things original in the original part of the theater. And we thought it would be a good idea to perhaps develop some type of museum to show off some of the artifacts that we have from years gone by. Some of these things are, well, about 125, 130 years old. There's another museum. Oh, let me show you. I showed you the original men's bathroom. Let me show you the original ladies' bathroom. And it's right there.
It's tiny.
It's extremely tiny. So on any given Sunday in 1897, you have 200 women at intermission all trying to get into this space.
I don't think that's changed since then.
You've been to Music Circus too. No, I didn't say that. They've corrected that problem over there. One more museum down here. This was the original box office for the Woodland Opera House. Back then you didn't have fax machines and printers and computers, so your entire administrative headquarters was right in this room. There's barely enough room here for 3 or 4 people to stand. That was the original box office. People would walk up to the front door, and this opens up, and that's how they bought their tickets. Trapdoor. I see the camera going. That was a trapdoor that leads underneath this room and underneath the Opera House.
Wow.
Some people say it was used in case of an emergency. Jesse James and his partners were still roaming the hillsides of this part of California occasionally. So that may have come in handy.
All right, what are these?
Okay, these. So people want to know, and the camera can't catch it yet, but they're up on the second level too. But let's see this. So you see that door up there? I know you're saying, boy, they're only asking for trouble. They're gonna have another lawsuit on their hands if somebody goes out that door. Those are actually windows. Those are windows, and the architect decided to make them look like doors, perhaps just to confuse us and give us something to talk about today. But originally, you would have to open these to allow for ventilation. But you also had to do matinees. We had matinees in the afternoon. You had to black out the light. So this is how you did it. Remember that door that caused the lawsuit? right here. Back then, it was a loading dock, and that poor woman dropped about 4 or 5 feet to the ground. Nowadays, you go out a brick stairway. This is one of two of this, we call these a grand box. And the Hershey family back in the day, they would sit in this box. Now there's a couple things about this box that are interesting. Number one, it's the worst seats in the house. If you sit here in these seats, you're going to see about half the show if you're lucky. However, if you want to be seen by your audience, these are the best seats in the house. All it took was money. We are now, despite what that sign says, we are going to visit the backstage of the historic Woodland Opera House. Or the stage, I should say. Welcome to the stage of the Woodland Opera House, where thousands of performers have performed over the last 130 years. Quite impressive, I think you'll have to admit. This used to be where the camera is faced now used to be sandbags. Back about 20 years ago, California gave us a grant of about $80,000 to replace the original sandbag system that the state required when we reopened, because they wanted this place restored to the original look that it had and feel of the 1890s. We replaced it, common sense prevailed, and we replaced it with this new modern system, which is much safer. Of course, this mess here, which I've been told for years not to touch, and I haven't. This is part of our mechanical system here at the Opera House, part of our lighting system. And I still do not touch that.
Looks like spaghetti.
It looks like spaghetti. Nowadays we have microphones. Back then we did not have microphones, but this place has amazing acoustic qualities. There are sound pockets here that if I talk, I happen to know where one of them is, right here. If I talk right here, it's almost like I'm wearing a mic. Amazing acoustics in this theater. So 120 years ago, we didn't need microphones. We just needed actors who could project, and people could hear just fine. A couple interesting things. This theater, like all good theaters, has trapdoors. Secret trapdoors that lead downstairs.
Well, they're not secrets anymore.
They're not secrets anymore. Where we're headed, I'll show you the other side of those secret trapdoors, which are still used today. It's an amazing catwalk system where people like, I think Craig has been up there. I haven't been up there, but you can't even probably capture it. It's kind of dark up there, but trust me, very high and scary. Another place where I do not go. Original cargo door. Remember the trains I talked about that would unload sets and orchestras and so on and so forth from people touring? Right through this door. Right through this door they would come. Let's go downstairs. We're going to go into what is referred to as the green room and 5 dressing rooms that are connected to the green room. Some lights on them. Welcome to the green room at the Woodland Opera House. I know, it's not green, but if you've been in green rooms, most of them are not green. Most of them are like bright yellow and pink, I think, to wake people up that are about to go on stage. It's surrounded by 5 dressing rooms. Now, an interesting thing about these dressing rooms is that these are the original dressing rooms that we would have had back in the 1890s. Now, they are filled today with modern graffiti. However, if you see a plexiglass plate like this, underneath that plate is original graffiti left from actors, performers, back in the 1800s. And they've been preserved under under plexiglass. Some photos. And I've taken the time to read most of these. They're in every dressing room. There's some very interesting things. People telling people, coming in a show behind them to pick up their laundry in Woodland and bring it to San Francisco where they're appearing next. People use it as a messaging system because we didn't have cell phones. So 3 dressing rooms here, a couple over here, and then the most important room in this green room is a bathroom for the actors. They do have a bathroom. What's this door? This is how the orchestra would load back in the day. We don't use that anymore. Now the orchestra loads from the side of the house. But that's how the orchestra would come upstairs. Remember the secret trapdoor? No, that's the other side. There's a side, and this thing is a portable elevator. We can get people up and down to the stage secretly using the elevator. One more thing. In that fire of 1892, a gentleman named William Porter, who was a firefighter, and the only firefighter to die in a line of duty in the history of Woodland, thank goodness. He died here. He died on the other side of this wall. And this is his photo. Right here. He died right on the other side of that wall. Some people say this place is haunted. If you Google Woodland Opera House ghost, you're going to get quite a response. People have had sightings here. We've had paranormal people come here and visit us doing studies. In fact, one year they held their annual convention here about a dozen years ago. They spent the night here. So there's supposed to be a lot of activity here. Never seen it myself, but makes for good stories. Google it. Of course, we have another set of stairs that goes up here to the other side of the stage. It's important for an actor to make an appearance on the correct side of stage. So we have 2 stairways. And we're back here on the stage.
Well, I think that's most of the theater. Got to see some exciting things that most people don't get to see.
Yes.
Well, now that we're back here on the stage, where presumably there haven't been a lot of actors lately, tell me a little bit about how the Woodland Opera House has fared through the pandemic and what kind of changes and adaptations you've gone through.
Well, the Woodland Opera House was presented with quite a challenge, like other theaters across the nation. Some of the theaters are simply not going to survive. This theater is not one of them. This theater will survive. And because we chose a path, we did some virtual shows the past year. Shows like Boo, which was an original production. We did A Christmas Carol, written by one of our favorite performers and directors here, Bob Cooner. We reran some of the shows that we did in the past that we did not have to pay royalties for to show them on the internet. Shows like Rumpelstiltskin, The Emperor's New Clothes, shows like that. And of course, we got through this with a lot of kind donations and some fundraising. I don't know if this is an appropriate time, but could we scan the audience real quick? You see all those folks out there? We have an audience today, except they're not real. But folks were allowed to purchase an image of themselves and we placed them out in the theater. These are some of our best supporters.
So I see here in the audience some cameras and some stuff that you don't normally see in the center row of a theater. What are you guys doing here in the theater?
You're right,
Why are all
Craig.
these cameras here?
You normally would not see this in live theater in the center audience, or center aisle rather. So tonight we are taping a show called Agatha Christie's The Count and the Curse. It was written once again by Bob Cooner, and it's going to be shown. It's going to be shown for the first time on May 14th It's going to be another virtual production the Opera House is going to offer our patrons in lieu of being able to come here and visit us in person. So tonight, actors and crew are going to show up and film another segment of that show. In the grand box, as you can see, we're set up. You're basically looking at a set here. And that'll be part of the set for the show tonight.
And this is the Foley booth?
Yes, that's the Foley booth, yes.
So that's where all the live sound effects are made.
And that's where all of the live sound effects are made for this particular show. Because we did not, this show, I believe that it was supposed to be in 1930s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So of course we didn't have the luxury of having computerized sound effects back then. So they're gonna create the sound effects right there in the grand box tonight.
So this is an example of some of the things that the theater has done to still be able to present arts and theater while still staying COVID safe.
Yes, we thought it was extremely important to stay connected with our patrons. And I think we've successfully done that for the past 13 months.
Well, Steve, I want to thank you for bringing us on this tour and showing us around this incredible historic facility here. And if people want to come and take a tour of their own in person, or they want to come and see a show, where can they find out more information about the Woodland Opera House?
Well, you can go online and order tickets online. You can call our box office. We'd be very happy to answer questions and sell you some tickets. We're not hard to find. Go online, give us a call. We hope to be back open for business here soon, and we would love to see you come out here.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having us.
All right, Craig, thank you for coming by today.